Welcome back, everyone. I am the Depressed Dior, and this is Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 17. For those of you who've been giving comments wishing me good health, thank you as always, and thank you guys for your support and watching these videos. As you can see, I did some changes to the box. Just been kind of fiddling with it and just seeing what other things I can mess around with. I ended up replacing Zerda with Grinchill. This does a couple of things. One, it gives me a faction buff for Silvaria. The other thing is she's a bit bulkier than Zerda, which makes her a little bit more reliable as far as staying alive is concerned. And Zerda in this box is just not really as useful for me because I tend to be a tank push, and I'm not generally trying to trade kills. So having Grinchill be able to do general kills and still be able to be like a bruiser and stuff is far more useful. It also gives her, she also has the ability to, negate guard and negate and limit some mobility options with her thrown shield, which can be used by other people. The other thing I replaced was I went and replaced Sissy White with Almeda. So brought back Almeda. She's already maxed out. She is, of course, SP class. I am trying to be a little less reliant on Act Agains. I'm also trying to get a little bit more options as far as dealing with mass debuffs and a bit more passive healing and things like that. The biggest danger, well, I mean, there's a lot of dangers. Let's put it that way. AoE rush is always a danger, so Almeda can help with that, with reflecting the debuffs and doing passive healing. There's also always the threat of Sword and Light and Shadow just insta-killing my tank, because that seems to happen more often than not. Even with Christiane, with Phalanxes and Steel Enchantment, and having First Strike or shared First Strike, because of all of her Effulgent stacks being gone, she still gets killed relatively easily by a 3C from Zerda. So this would give her at least another option to prevent the self-res negation by reflecting it back. So that's kind of the gist of it. The other thing is I did do a bit of whaling and got a bunch of the new accessory. Most people just call them butterflies. And what those do is plus 5% to all stats. And then it also, as the base stats, it has defense and magic defense. And then the special ability is at the start of every round. If you don't have one already, it'll give you a butterfly buff, and that butterfly will negate one debuff, no matter what it is, unless of course it ignores, immunity. If it triggers, it also restores 20% of health. So this is kind of the new tank item. It used to be you kind of just threw on like whatever accessory you felt the tank was going to get hit with the most, usually something like heal negation or something along those lines. But with this, it gives a bit more flexibility. Of course, it does have the vulnerability of just being one use every round, but it can be used in a lot of situations where, if Zerda suddenly Sword and Light Shadow rushes you and, does her self-resing negation effect, the butterfly will actually soak that, which is very helpful. Anyway, as for our opponent, before I talk about my opponent, I did lose a match prior to this with this box. I'm still kind of not very good at deciding when I should be grabbing a healer early, and that ended up costing me, where I just got overran with a bunch of AoE. So I'm kind of trying to get used to that as well. Anyway, enough rambling. This box was very similar to the one I lost to. Does have a few faces we don't see too often. There's regular Zerda, which surprisingly I haven't seen as often as I would expect, despite her recent update. I don't see Jintoki as often anymore. Grinchill I hardly see. And then the rest of these are kind of things I generally see in most boxes in some form or fashion. In any case, my opponent goes ahead and bans Isolde first. I go ahead and ban Andriel. This was kind of a mistake. When I initially looked at this box, I thought she didn't have Isolde. Otherwise, I would have banned Isolde first. But this kind of works, I guess. In any case, I grabbed Silvaria because that is the theme of the box. They get rid of my Rosen Seal, get rid of my Nemea, and they grab Sword and Lightning Shadow right off the bat. So at this point I was like, oh, they have Isolde, so I get rid of Isolde, get rid of Jace. And I go ahead and go straight for Almeda at this point. This will guarantee I can at least prevent this, I can reflect the self-res negation. They get rid of my Awakened one, get rid of my Eshian. They grab their Eshian. I go ahead and get rid of Zerda, get rid of Nemea. I'm mostly getting rid of physical AoE DPS. I also get rid of assassins, of course. And at this point, I go ahead and grab Grinshield. Looking at this box only has one tank, and technically, yeah, only one healer. So I'm kind of okay with... I can very easily use Grinshield to negate tanking. It also gives a faction buff to Silvaria. Also, the rest of my options weren't too special. I could have... Ice Melda I was not too keen on, though honestly it would be okay in this box. But yeah, actually I was torn between Ice Melda and Grinshield here. I ended up going Grinshield because it guaranteed I got a faction buff, because I wasn't entirely certain that I was going to have another healer. So I wasn't sure if I was going to get Leona or not. At this point they go ahead and get rid of Lycoris, get rid of Ice Melda. They go ahead and grab Auden-Kelmo. I go ahead and get rid of Jintoki, get rid of Lena. Lena has, I've mentioned it before, she's either completely toothless or she is the reason my battle is over. At this point, they left me with all my tanks and Leona, so I was like, alright, sure, I'll grab Leona. I have now multiple healers and good to go. I figured my opponent was fine with Leona simply because they had a tank buster, but I was hoping to survive long enough using Almeda's reflections to take care of that. Also, all my tanks except for Hilda has the butterfly. So they got rid of Hilda, got rid of Freya. Go ahead and grab the Awakened one. At this point, I get rid of Ice Melda, get rid of Grinshield. And I was fine with them either taking a healer or taking a tank. And they took a tank. And I grabbed Christiane. I'm more comfortable using Christiane, though Lightbringer probably would have been slightly better. So yeah, Butterfly's Blessings. So 3 of my tanks have Butterfly's Blessing, Grinshield has Butterfly's Blessing, and Eshian has Butterfly's Blessing. So 5 of my characters have butterflies. Besides that, we're kind of good to go. Alright. So, let's go over our stuff first. So, Almeda, it's been a little while since we've last used her. We got Roast, which is our 3C. We got Almeda, Never Bows, and Act As I See Fit, which are both her SP abilities. I went with Windbloom Chanters, which, honestly, she doesn't... Windbloom Chanters aren't really that useful in this box, because a lot of my stuff doesn't particularly have long cooldowns, but it's better than nothing. One thing I've noticed with Windbloom Chanters is they actually have no innate weakness to melee, which is kind of strange. Anyway, Grinshield here with War Falcons, and has, of course, all Air Slash and then her exclusives for the most part, Cold Shield and 3C. Christiane, I have Phalanxes, and then, of course, all of her exclusives. Silvaria, Deck Gunners with Sneak, Valkyrie Power, which is her 3C, Disarm. And then Leona, Windbloom Chanters, and then 3C, Heal, and Act Again. Our opponent here has Guardian Infantry Lightbringer here with Strengthen, 3C and Discipline, and then we got Sword and Light and Shadow with Steelman Werewolves, which has, of course, her Teleport, 3C and Air Slash. We got Auden-Kelmo here with all single targets except for her 3C. With Fairy Spirit Prophets, and then we got Awakened one who has single target, 3C, and Dimension Shift. And then we got Eshian here with all of her exclusives and Star Prismas like usual. Alright. So obviously the key thing here is I have to be careful about what the swaps are, and of course what the if anyone does any portal shenanigans. So for right now I kind of just stay back and get the reflections going. For those who don't know, Almeda in SP class form will do 2 debuffs on 2 random targets. So, did it on Sword and Light and Shadow, which is actually really useful, because that actually reduces damage. And then the rest is on Lightbringer, which doesn't really matter. Also, she heals, I think, 2 people and removes debuffs in the process. Alright, so my opponent moves up. Also, it's going a little fast. Let's fix that. There we go. Alright, so portals are up. So Eshian can go here and then go 1, 2, 3 and attack to there. Sword and Lane Shadow can go to here and go 1, 2, 3 and do air slash at the very least, but which isn't that useful. Awakened One could do some shenanigans by doing a swap with Lightbringer after she gets her 3C up. That'll prevent the displacement, and then she can just teleport herself to here and then do some AoE shenanigans. So there's some options. For the most part, what I definitely don't want to do is I don't want to move to any closer, because that'll put me in range of Sword and Light and Shadows and doing Decisive Blade. Alright. Go ahead and stay. I'm going to go ahead and buff in place. Okay, Lightbringer's set up. Also, one thing to note about Autumn Kelma's first move is she is 9 spaces away from Silvaria right now. So I don't actually have to move forward at all. So I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to get into snipe mode. So I believe I don't get any benefits for the faction buff itself. I mean, I get the stat increases, but the actual effect itself, I'll never have more mobility than the attacker, so I'll never get the plus 15% damage, unfortunately. Alright, Ashian moves up. Ends up doing a super buff on herself. Buffs up Autumn Kelma with the King's Crown. I go ahead and do 3C on Almeda because she's the only one that I don't have an actual buff for. Now this is funny. I get Spellbound, they get reflected back on her, so now the Awakened One is Spellbound. Alright. Valkyria Flash. She does have a Reflect Ring. Alright. But it barely hurts her. Alright, so that does a few things. It refreshes the faction buff for Grinshield, because anyone that's strategic that gets a kill will actually refresh the buff for her. And then it got rid of an Influence stack for Christiane. So I go ahead and use this opportunity to go ahead and get rid of the last stack. Because I was hoping, getting rid of all my stacks would give me, first strike when defending and hopefully be enough to deal with Sword and Light and Shadow. I go ahead and do Goddess Loves You, which just makes it so you do additional debuffs when you attack. It does like 2 debuffs before fighting. But for the most part, I just did it so I can cycle my cooldowns. So at this point, I go ahead and shift forward. Now this is going to be funny. So she has 3 stacks. Of course, gets sniped by Silvaria on the way. And stuns herself. So no attacks whatsoever. Because remember, I had 2 stacks of the Reflection. One of it got soaked by Spellbound, and then the other one got just soaked by this. So I was like, alright, cool. That's good to go for me. So I'll go ahead and shift down. So at this point, I don't have any Reflection stacks. And my opponent would go first. So technically, she could have... There's not really any danger. Like I said, there's no more Reflection stacks, but I still have the Butterfly, and so the Butterfly would soak the Decisive Blade. But in any case, I did attack with Liana here just to get rid of one of the lives that Eshian has, which works out in our favor here. It also got rid of all of her stacks, so she doesn't really get anything else out of it. She's also stunned, so she's not doing anything. So yeah, as predicted, here comes the teleport. Share Realms. A little bit of passive damage. And then here it is. So, Butterfly soaked the status effect, so I do still have my self-res. Both of us have first strike, so we both attack at the same time. 46,000 damage with crit. That's so insane. Thankfully, I do get the self-res, and I go ahead and switch into my other form, which allows me to passively heal as well after combat. And there you go. So I go ahead and use this opportunity to go ahead and just shoot in place. My opponent, she's currently immune to all debuffs because of the teleport. And I do 44,000 damage, apparently. So take off a life from her. Her exclusive activates, but it's not going to matter because she doesn't have a turn to take. So, moves to get in tanking range, I just throw out my shield to negate the tanking. And I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to go ahead and finish off Sword and Light and Shadow. I'm flying, so I got first strike for this. And there you go, no Sword and Light and Shadow. S17 by herself is definitely not going to be able to get kill. So I don't know if my opponent didn't realize that Lightbringer is immune to displacement, so the swap would not work. But she can still shift forward and still get in range. It is pretty funny that her own Spellbound was hindering her. So I'm going to get hit with 3C here. Reflects 3 debuffs, so now she's triple debuffed. The rest of my stuff isn't too bad. Oh, so one thing I didn't realize during this is when I got hit with the 3C from Sword and Light and Shadow, it did dispel Christiane's guard, so her guard range is non-existent right now. Also, technically her guard is completely negated because of no passive. So, get hit with Spellbound, which Butterfly on Grid Shield negated. And then I go ahead and reapply Reflections. Okay. Does this actually remove... The heal itself actually does not remove any debuffs, so the staff, and I'm guessing, will remove the rest of it. Not sure. That was weird. Anyway. Actually, I'll take a look at that. So 3C is active. Oh, there is one change for Liana. She usually had the plushie, which increases her buff durations. I've actually replaced it with a badge, so now she's immune to silence and immune to fixed damage. I got screwed over by that enough times in World Arena that I decided to change things up. Okay, so that only lasted. Okay, this only lasted. So I got rid of the passive from the staff, and then this one only lasts for 1 turn. So that's what happened. All right, so I'm gonna do act again on Sylvaria here. Most of this shifting is just so I can get in range to shoot normally. Unfortunately, so butterflies are already applied. Unfortunately, I didn't realize she had a Brace proc, so me moving down here didn't save Sylvaria, unfortunately. In fact, it exposed her completely, but there's not much I can do about it. Yeah, I mean, either way, I was going to get sniped, which is fine. I didn't want S17 to stay alive. So, shield is still negating guard, so I go ahead and use this opportunity to go ahead and kill the Awakened one. She'll come back next round, which is completely fine. Because she'll have reduced stats and she'll die inevitably. Alright. Okay, with Discipline, which isn't a big deal. Go ahead and apply Roast, which is a heal that also makes it so everyone does debuffs, 2 debuffs at the end of their turn to nearby enemies. Needless to say, there's going to be a lot of debuffs being thrown around. So yeah, shifted down here. I was still not aware that I did not have guard active on Christiane. But all those turns I just took with Roast. So Roast does, yeah, 2 debuffs within 4 blocks. So now I've done all this. Damage taken, attack, skill, defense, magic defense, and crit reduction, which I didn't even know was one of the things on the roster. Alright, So go ahead and use this opportunity to attack. Again, like I said, I'm not aware that I currently don't have Leonic guarded. Do some more debuffs there. I'm at full HP, so I do still have the reduction from holy troops. Yeah, none of this to just reduce the skill. Okay, so yeah, did some damage. She teleports around, reapplies her faction buff, and she's going to put out Spellbound, but it doesn't matter because it's just going to get reflected. So yeah, my opponent doesn't even bother at that point. There's no way my opponent can get kill. I'm going to eventually kill Lightbringer, and eventually my shield will come back, in which case I would be able to kill the Awakened one, assuming that she's even alive at that point. So yeah, really fun. I do like trying to use Almeta. Her SP class is really interesting. It's just unfortunate that she kind of gets overwritten by a bunch of other characters. There is another Keeler that will eventually be coming out soon that is going to be another kind of game breaker. And yes, I'll probably be using her because she's amazing. But for right now, I think this box will be what I stick with for a little bit longer and see how it goes, unless something else tickles my fancy. So until then, I am The Depressed Dior. This was Langrisser Mobile Apex Season 17. I'll see you guys later.